if you fire Doug Pederson, you have to fire Howie Roseman. There is no way you can fire Doug Pederson without putting blame on Howie Roseman. This season was not just Doug Pederson's fault. This was clearly a complete organizational front office mess. Howie Roseman has put this team in a hole by continuously giving contracts to aging players that have not been able to play an entire season for years. The Deshaun Jackson contract, the Alshon Jeffrey contract, Jason Peters, not getting younger at the line with consistent good players, terrible drafting at the wide receiver position, defense is not being filled with young talent, continually giving contracts to older players there as well. His inability to find young, new talent and be able to cut ties because he has a sentimental issue or value placed on a player. I mean, that's been the downfall of the front office. They have not made any steps to make this a team that could have continued success year after year after year. Welcome to the ChadBurn Show, brought to you by M. Chad Baldwin. Hello and welcome to the ChadBurn Show. I am your host, ChadBurn, and we are back at it for another episode of the ChadBurn Show. This week, following the Super Wildcard Weekend in the NFL playoffs that just occurred, it was, if you are a football fan, there is nothing better than 2 straight days of football with meaning, with purpose, with so much on the line, and all these players and teams just playing their heart out. It was good, fun football. Now, to be fair, many of these games were actually not that great. There were some that were pretty dull. There were some pretty one-sided matches. There was some serious offense lacking in some of these performances, but all in all, it was still a very good Super Wildcard Weekend in the NFL playoffs. And we are going to get into each of the matchups, talk about how they went down, the stats of the major performances, and really how my predictions unfolded and who I had picked to win in those games and, who ended up being the true victor. We'll also look ahead to next week to see who's going to face up against who, and then we'll have to cover a little bit of the Doug Pederson story coming out now, which is looking like maybe Doug Pederson's not as safe as we thought. Well, folks, it was a hell of a start to this football weekend with a great matchup between the AFC South runner-up, the Indianapolis Colts, versus the number 2 seed in the AFC in the Buffalo Bills. This was just it was excellent to see because, as I mentioned before, I thought the Colts could do pretty well if they were able to maintain 2 things, a good run game and a strong defense. I then assumed that however, the Bills were able to turn this into a shootout and score as they've been able to do throughout the end of the season at a consistent clip, the Colts would have a tough time keeping up because their offense is not at the same level as the Buffalo Bills. Well, the Colts kept it close. The Bills only end up scoring 27 points, and in fact, that's why the Colts had a chance to win this one. The end game of the score would obviously be 27-24, and the Colts would fall short, but it was still an impressive push, and almost at the end, the Colts had a chance to at least kick a field goal and tie the game and head into an overtime. So some notable stats of this one, obviously Josh Allen, 26 of 35, 324 yards and 2 touchdowns. He did carry the ball as well, 11 times for 54 yards and scored a touchdown, a close touchdown into the end zone as well. The main beneficiary of this game, obviously, Stephon Diggs, who him and Josh Allen are it's incredible to see because they have built a relationship after just 1 year that is remarkable between a wide receiver and the quarterback. They seem to just get each other perfectly. They know each other's kind of tendencies. They're able to get into the right position. Josh Allen really knows where Stephon Diggs is going to be, and Stephon Diggs knows where to get. So Stephon Diggs, 6 receptions, 128 yards, and 1 touchdown. I mean, it's just insane. Averaging out almost 20 yards per catch there for Stephon Diggs. It was just a masterclass between a quarterback and wide receiver connection. And when they needed a play, Josh Allen was able to get Stephon Diggs. On the other side of the ball, Phillip Rivers, 27 of 46, 309 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jonathan Taylor, the running back, with 21 carries, 78 yards and 1 touchdown. For the receiving end, I think Pittman was the big beneficiary for Phillip Rivers' performance, but it was still, a very close game all the way to the end. The Colts obviously took an early lead, going 10-7 after a 1-yard push from Jonathan Taylor, but the Bills would close the first half with a lead after taking 14-10 on a beautiful 2 back-to-back interceptions by the Colts that were overturned. The Bills would go down, and there was I believe it was Josh Allen was trying to throw it to I think it was Brown. Yeah, Brown twice. And in each occasion on back-to-back situations, the Colts picked off the ball. But the first one was called back because of defensive offsides. And then the second one was overturned because it was ruled an incomplete pass. Bad luck for the Colts early on, but great luck for the Bills, who were able to turn those overturned interceptions into a touchdown by Josh Allen. Obviously, Buffalo looked to be in control in the second half, ending up taking a 27-16 lead late. But however, the Colts, as we mentioned, would battle back. Because the Bills stayed under 30 points, the Colts seemed to be able to kind of chip away slowly but surely. They obviously went for 6. They got the 6 points, did not go, went for 2 and missed it. They would go again for another touchdown and get the 2-point conversion. Slowly getting it close towards the end. They were within, 3 points, and the Colts did have the ball. And honestly, it looked like the Bills were going to close that game out on the last drive for the Colts to try and make this one a tied overtime game, because as I believe it was Pascal, after he caught the ball, he decided to get up and the Bills stripped the ball away from him. In all honesty, after looking at the replay on multiple occasions, I still believe that it was a fumble. But the ref deemed that he had been touched and were down by contact by one of the Bills players as he came in. I think it was Povoy, as he came in, touched him on the back as he was getting up. I still think that the touch came after the knee was off the ground, so therefore he was up and moving and was a player running who could have been easily taken. The fumble should have counted. But, refs overturned that, so the Colts still had a chance. Unfortunately, Colts would go 3 incompletions straight in a row, end that one, and it would end their dash and really end their hopes of winning that game. Bills defense holding on tight at the end, keeping it close, but then obviously sealing it for the win. So, as I predicted, the Bills did win this one. I still thought it was the right position. It was the right kind of game script for the Colts to kind of pull this one out and maybe create the upset. I was surprised the Bills didn't put on more points, but as we know, the Indianapolis Colts defense has been one of the top defenses in the AFC this year. And they did their job. They were able to kind of control Josh Allen, at least in the pocket, not give him that many easy windows to throw into. But as we mentioned earlier, Stephon Diggs just lit up the field. He and Josh Allen were looking amazing. And when you have that kind of connection going, anything can happen. I was a little disappointed to see some of Phillip Rivers' performance. I thought some of the passes were behind receivers, a little overthrown. He was obviously unlucky with many wide receivers dropping the ball. We saw in the early first half where, I think it was in 2 plays in a row, Pittman dropped it, then Jonathan Taylor dropped the ball on a screen. So just unlucky there. But Frank Reich, I think, coached a good game. I think he put his team in a place to succeed. And I think the big now kind of question for the Indianapolis Colts in the offseason is who's going to be your quarterback going forward. Phillip Rivers was a great kind of stopgap quarterback on his way heading out, into retirement and probably the Hall of Fame. You got a lot of success out of him. You made it to the playoffs. You had a chance to win a first round and move forward. But I think you need a long-term decision at that quarterback spot. We'll see in the offseason where they go with it. Do they go with another old veteran like Matt Stafford, trying to bring in someone that they can plug and play? Or do they try and go for someone younger that maybe has a lot of upside but is a very risky pick in Carson Wentz? Reunite Frank Reich and Carson Wentz and see if they can kind of get back that chemistry from 2017 and go on another run. The Colts clearly have a strong defense. They'll have a lot of weapons back next year. They have a young running back, Jonathan Taylor, who looks to be an every down kind of back running back as the year will progress. Nyheim Hines is a great passing running back as well. You have a lot of weapons on the outside at the wide receiver position. I don't see why they can't come back and make it stronger next year. The Bills, on the other hand, have another week of playoff football. They look great. I don't see how many people are going to be able to stop them. The defense, as we mentioned, came up big when they needed to. And then obviously the offense got the job done and, played well. I think they played well all the way till maybe the end. I think the Bills could probably ice the game a little better if they had a better chance of that. But I think they did enough, obviously, to get the win. So very impressive by the Bills. Look forward to see the next week matchup. The following game after that was the Rams versus the Seahawks. And this one was a big surprise. I had discussed in this one that the Seahawks on paper were the better team. But the Seahawks did not look like the Seahawks in the last few weeks of the season. Russell Wilson has not been playing well. DK Metcalf has not been as explosive as we thought. That offense, as much as it is a run-first offense, relies on Russell Wilson being in the game. If Russell Wilson cannot be on top of his game, play at a high level, and really carry that team, that offense can struggle. And that's what we saw yesterday. It was a very low-scoring game throughout the day. Only field goals were scored until the Rams got a touchdown off a defensive interception. A beautiful pick where the cornerback, I don't believe it was Johnson, but one of the cornerbacks on the Rams just read the play perfectly, saw that it was going to be a wide receiver bubble screen to DK Metcalf on the left side of the field. He jumped it, got past the blocker before he was able to put a hand on him, and just completely cut off the lane and picked that ball off and ran for pick 6, making it a 13-3 game at the time. And when you saw that, you kind of thought, okay, now the Rams are getting a little life. Their defense is scoring for them, which is key for any great defense to continue success throughout the playoffs. So when you had that, you didn't have to worry much on the other side of the ball. Because the Rams, unfortunately, suffered some offensive struggles early on. Namely, they lost their starting quarterback. A lot of controversy going into this game on whether or not Jared Goff would start after dislocating and needing surgery on the thumb of his passing hand. He had been out, I think it was 12 days. That's it, 12 days. No one really expected him to be back, but he felt healthy and thought he should play. However, Sean McVay went with Wilford, who is a backup quarterback and, offered some different tangibles that, I would say Jared Goff doesn't have, namely being able to run the ball and run the bootleg effectively. And so the Sean McVay decided that was the best chance for the team was to, play behind Wilford. And so Wilford was in the game, playing all right, but unfortunately suffered a late hit as he's going down to the ground by Jamal Adams. A shoulder-to-helmet hit. Again, not helmet to helmet, but pretty late, that hit Wilford and took him out of the game with a neck injury. He was eventually taken by an ambulance to the nearest hospital. More updates on really what happened to him will follow. But again, 2 years in a row where a Seahawks player has taken out the opposing quarterback seems to be a winning formula for them. They think that they can just go straight after a quarterback, take him out of the game, and hope that that will change the tides of the game. It's disappointing to see. I think this needs to be looked into because it's now been 2 playoffs in a row where they've taken out a quarterback with a late hit as they're going down. This year, Jamal Adams. Last year, Jadeveon Clowney on Carson Wentz, giving him a concussion and knocking him out of the game with another late hit to the head. In that one. I mean, I don't know who's coaching them. I don't know what their strategy is, but they seem to just want to take out a quarterback as they're giving themselves up to the ground. I think it's despicable. I think it was disgusting that the refs didn't call a penalty on this one. They did throw the flag, but ended up picking up the flag, saying it was not a penalty. I just don't know what they're seeing. I don't know what kind of agreement they have going on with the Seahawks, but they seem to allow them to get away with anything with a quarterback on the ground. And I was very upset about that one. I figured that should have definitely been, called back, changed up. I mean, it just doesn't make sense of why you would, put those quarterbacks at risk when you're trying to protect them consistently. So very disappointed to see that one. But Jared Goff will come back in the game and would help the Rams at least, to a degree. I mean, it didn't seem that they were playing that poorly. Jared Goff, wasn't crazy, wasn't blowing up the stat sheet, but did enough to help them at least get in a position to win. So Wilford exits the games. Seahawks are battling back after the big, after the interception, which gave the 13-3 lead for the Rams. Seattle is getting the ball back, and they are able to score a beautiful deep pass to DK Metcalf off a broken play. Great communication, great rapport between, obviously, the wide receiver DK Metcalf and quarterback Russell Wilson. When the play breaks down, DK Metcalf knew where to go. No one over the top on him, and Russell Wilson was able to drop a dime to DK Metcalf, who was able to take, I think, about a 41-yard touchdown into the end zone to give the Seahawks a fighting chance, 13-10 at that point. Rams would come back to end the half with a big, beautiful drive led by Cam Akers. First, the 40-yard looked like kind of a screen pass. It was challenged to say Jared Goff went over the line. He did not. Cam Akers would then cap that off with a rushing touchdown at the end of that drive to make it 20-10 going into the half. And then as the second half goes, I mean, it seemed all defense. The second half looked like all defense. It was boring football, which means it was a defensive football game. If you love defense, I mean, that was a clinic there. Something to note, the first 10 drives combined between the two teams, the first 10s, 5 each, All were punts except for 2 field goals from each team respectively. That's all they were able to muster. No touchdowns, no explosive plays. That's it. The defenses kept the 2 teams in check, and they were only able to each get a field goal respectively during the first 10 drives of the second half. The defense was all over them. The Rams would end up breaking the trend, getting off the field off a fumble from a Seattle punt return. Seattle trying to punt the ball. They fumble it. Rams get the ball. Short yardage. I think they only had to go like 15, 20 yards on that. End up scoring a touchdown, making it 30-13 with 4:46 left in the game. At that point, it seemed the Seahawks did not seem like they were able to get any offense going. When you saw the lead go to 30-13, with 4.5 minutes left in the game, normally we'd say anything is possible with Russell Wilson, but this has not looked like the Seahawks offense of late, and they were just not able to get it done. Unfortunately, they were able to get some points on the board. They made it 30-20, but that's it. There was nothing real after that seemed to give the Seahawks much hope, so the Rams held on and won that one. Some stats to keep in mind: Russell Wilson, 11-27, 174 yards. That's it. Didn't even break 200 yards. Threw 2 touchdowns and an interception. DK Metcalf with 5 receptions, 96 yards, and 2 touchdowns, almost breaking that century mark. Jared Goff, 9 of 19, 155 yards, 1 touchdown. That's it. So that's all it took. Cam Akers, 28 carries, 131 yards, 1 touchdown, and then Cooper Kupp with 4 receptions for 78 yards. It ended up being a story where the Rams were able to run the ball effectively. Their defense came alive. Their defense stopped Russell Wilson, continued to hassle him and get sacks, and obviously score on the defensive side of the ball. Doing that in that combination is what gave the Rams obviously the opportunity here. Take away that defensive touchdown, and it's a 23-20 game late, and the Seahawks have a chance to win it. So, kudos to them. The Rams are going to have to rely on their defense going forward. I do not think you can really trust, their offense if Jared Goff is going to be at the helm. I think you really have to rely on the defense to carry this team and carry them deep into the playoffs. So I had said Seahawks would win, but keep an eye out on the Rams. The Rams ended up coming away with the upset. The other big game, obviously, on Saturday was the Buccaneers versus the Washington football team. Nothing crazy in this one. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers were the favorites to win. They did win. They win in a interesting fashion, 31-23. Tom Brady, 22 of 40 for 381 yards, 2 touchdowns, with Mike Evans being the big guy to help him out. 6 receptions for 119 yards. Absolutely incredible. On the Washington football team side of the ball, Alex Smith was out with a calf injury, so he was not starting at quarterback, did not dress up. Tyler Heineke, I'm never going to get his name right, but he ends up coming in to start for the quarterback and did a hell of a job. 26 of 44 for 360 yards and 1 touchdown. He also carried the ball 6 times for 46 yards and ran in a beautiful touchdown we'll get to later. Sims on the Washington football team receiving was killing it, going for 104 yards on 7 receptions. So really, it ended up being a very productive offensive game. The Washington football team just didn't convert enough opportunities to touchdowns, whereas the Tampa Bay Buccaneers got it in the end zone. They were able to get it done effectively. I think up at half, the Bucs seemed to be kind of in a dominating position, 18-7. Tom Brady had a deep touchdown pass to Antonio Brown, not A.J. Brown, to Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin, which really just made them seem like they were the ones in control throughout that first half. The second half, the Washington football team did make it close. So they were able to score a couple touchdowns to get 18-16 with some field goals. They used some short yardage situations to get close into this game. Good defense. The run by Heineke into the end zone was absolutely gorgeous. The man runs to the left, able to get on the outside, and makes a dive completely outstretched to the pylon, getting in the end zone. It's what the Washington football team needed to stay, feel competitive. They're only down 2 at that point. They think they have a chance in this game. You had some faith that maybe Washington football team with a strong defense could keep this game close. Unfortunately, Tom Brady, as we saw in the stat line with 381 yards, he just went off. He was able to connect with all his wide receivers. Mike Evans was killing it. Godwin, Antonio Brown. You even had great running game by Jones and Barber. So, really, I believed in that football team all the way through. I think that the Buccaneers have been looking great. They've been clicking at the right time, and the defense did enough to frustrate the Washington football team. But again, playing with a quarterback that hasn't played all season as a starter, it's tough to do. It's tough to find consistent offense. So I think you got to give a lot of credit to, obviously, the Washington football team for keeping this one interesting. But in the end, Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the team to move forward and advance and take on, as we'll mention later, the New Orleans Saints, which will be an awesome matchup. Finally, we got into Sunday, and the first game of Sunday was an AFC matchup, a repeat of last year's playoffs, and having some bad blood after an early Week 11 matchup where the Tennessee Titans stomped on the Baltimore Ravens. The logo in the middle of their field, it was going to be something that would occur later in the game by the Baltimore Ravens. But the Ravens and Titans, a 20-13 game, not explosive, not high scoring. Derrick Henry did not get going. Only 40 yards from Derrick Henry, which was really the story of the game. Tannehill, 18-26 for only 165 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. On the other side of the ball, Lamar Jackson did everything he needed to get his first playoff win. Obviously going 17-24, 179 yards, 16 carries for 136 yards and 1 touchdown. I mean, just explosive, over 300 yards combined in total offense from Lamar Jackson. He was able to connect with, obviously, Hollywood Brown for 7 receptions for 109 yards. I mean, Lamar Jackson just did everything he needed to do to win this game. Early on, it felt like it was a Tennessee Titans game. They're up 10-0. They're kind of controlling the ball. Nothing crazy, but some good passes here and there by Tannehill. The Baltimore Ravens would score a field goal, and then at one point, it all blew up. Lamar Jackson breaks free up the middle, sneaking the ball up and running all the way for a touchdown, a long touchdown, reaching a max speed of 20 miles per hour. Lamar Jackson, when he did this is when the tone of the game changed. You knew that once this got going, once Lamar Jackson knew he could be effective with his legs, once he could control the game and could see the field the way he wants to, there was just no stopping him. And you couldn't get anything done. That was it. The Lamar Jackson controlled this game at all facets of it. When they needed a run, he got it. When they needed a first down, he was able to get it. They scored effectively. I mean, that's what you want to see from your franchise quarterback, and Lamar Jackson got it done. Absolutely incredible and very impressive by this team. Impressed all around. I thought the Baltimore Ravens played great. I predicted the Titans would win this one. After we saw last year, I thought if Derrick Henry could get going, it was all over, and that's what the Baltimore Ravens focus on. They said, Tannehill, you have to beat us through the air. You have to pass and win this one against us. We're not going to let Derrick Henry get anything going. They completely filled the box. They were clogging up the middle. Derrick Henry just could not get done, and he was visibly frustrated on the sideline. You saw him and Vrabel get at it during this game. And he was just not happy with how he was being used. He thought he could be more effective, better blocking scheme, what have you. Derrick Henry thought that he could have been, the game changer in this one. And unfortunately, it just didn't happen. The Ravens were not going to lose this year because Derrick Henry had a big game. And it should be frustrating for him because he was the king this year of rushing and just could not get it done in the playoffs. But the Ravens did enough, obviously, answering the second half and just kind of exploding at that point. Tennessee just really could not control Jackson on those key third downs. And, they were just kept on their heels at all times. You could see that the Tennessee defense just didn't feel comfortable with Lamar Jackson there, whether they had a spy on him, whether they're keeping more in the box to try and control him. It just wasn't enough. The RPOs were beautiful. Jackson's able to read defense really well and decide whether to keep the ball or give it off to his running back. So kudos to him. He hit some big passes late in the game, moving and play action. So as we all saw, the Baltimore Ravens just really came into their own, and we gotta be impressive and give Lamar Jackson credit. He didn't win last year, but he needed to get this one done this time. Obviously, the Tennessee Titans, though, while it was a 20-13 game, had a chance to tie it and send it to overtime with a final drive. But as we mentioned, the Baltimore Ravens said, you have to beat us through the air with Tannehill throwing, and Tannehill ended up making the critical mistake, throwing to a wide receiver who ended up falling down, and the ball would land straight into Marcus Peters' hands. After making this interception, the Baltimore Ravens would run out to the middle of the field and stomp on the Tennessee Titans logo, getting their sweet revenge and obviously earning it after, just dominating them on that front. I will also mention that Tannehill missed a wide open A.J. Brown on the left side of the field. I think the announcers hit the nail on the head, as I try and get that idiom out. But they were able, he just did not read it. A.J. Brown had a one-on-one matchup, was able to beat the guy, was clearly open, got over the top with no one covering behind him. Unfortunately, Tannehill was just zeroed in all the way to throw to where he wanted to go with it. His wide receiver ended up falling down, and that's how Marcus Peters gets the pick. And that's it. At that point, there's nothing going to happen. The next drive, Baltimore gets it. Tennessee needs to stop them and have any chance, any hope of getting the ball back and tying the game. And what does Lamar Jackson do? Rushes the ball for like 20 yards, stays in bounds, slides, and that's it. That's the game. So again, sad for the Tennessee Titans. Thought they could maybe make a run of it being the AFC South champions, but they were stopped by a well-coached and well-schemed out Baltimore Ravens. Bears lose to the Saints. We are not going to cover this one at all. It was, I think, a 20-3 game. Yeah, that's how they end up losing. I mean, the Bears looked awful. Mr. Trubisky looks awful. The Saints played well enough to win the game. Drew Brees went 28 for 39 for 265 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kamara almost getting 100 yards rushing with 1 touchdown. I mean, I have no comments. The Bears looked awful. The Bears had a great run at the end of the season. They looked like they may have a chance. I said this could be a trap game because the Saints have not been playing well, and maybe the Bears doing well enough on defense to mess them up. I mean, the Bears did have the right formula. Drew Brees looked uncomfortable from the defense. The defense was able to get their hands on the ball. They were able to get turnovers. I mean, that's what you needed the defense to do. And the offense had no answers. I mean, they were undisciplined, getting penalties. Robinson was thrown out of the game. Oh no, Anthony Miller was thrown out of the game for throwing a punch. I mean, it was just it was just chaos, and they didn't look good. Matt Nagy clearly was not coaching that team up. They didn't look comfortable. They didn't have a groove. There's nothing going right for him. Trubisky again, just not looking like a decent quarterback, and it's a shame because he was able to win his spot back and play great football for the end of the season. But the formula they had did not work here, and it was just all done after that. So no comments on that one. Saints win. Saints move on. They'll play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that will be a good game for them. But now we can move to the last game on Sunday, Sunday Night Football, the best playoff game of the weekend, and it was the Browns-Steelers. A rematch of the Week 17 game that clinched it and sealed the playoff berth for the Cleveland Browns. The Browns beat the Steelers 48-37. It was just the best game. It was exciting from the start to the finish, and great for a team that has not seen success in the playoffs for so long to be able to get this one and to get it against a division rival. But from the first whistle, the first snap of the game, the Steelers were in a hole. I mean, the first play of the game, Pouncey snaps the ball over Roethlisberger's head. It goes into the end zone because Roethlisberger doesn't dive on the ball. Completely baffling to me, but clearly just didn't want the effort. He thought that the running back was going to be able to get on the ball and be able to jump on it and control it. He did not. The Browns get into the end zone. They jump on the ball, get a touchdown. So literally the first play of the game, Browns are up 7-0. And after that, it was just all interceptions, turnovers, and everything to do with the Browns. Let's see how this all went down. Obviously, first play, Cleveland gets a touchdown, up 7-0. Then the next drive for the Steelers, Ben Roethlisberger throws an interception. So Cleveland now has 14 quick points in the first quarter. And then after a punt by the Steelers, the Cleveland Browns go down and score again. So it's 21-0 with 4 minutes and 40 seconds left in the first quarter. I mean, come on, Steelers. This is your divisional rivals in a playoff game, first round, and you will get in such a deep hole. I mean, once they go up 21-0 with 4:40 left in the first quarter, the Browns then get another interception off Ben Roethlisberger and take only 3 plays and 15 yards to score a touchdown. So they're now up 28-0. It was just a complete beatdown. And then after scoring the 3-play, 15-yard game again, they get another interception. So in the first half, they had 3 interceptions plus a fumble for a touchdown. I mean, they had no answers, the Steelers. Ben Roethlisberger, I don't know what he was seeing. I wanted to basically put the quote of Sam Darnold that he was seeing ghosts out there because he couldn't see the field at all. He was throwing the ball high. It was going off the hands of wide receivers into the hands of the Cleveland defense. Straight picks, obviously, right to them. I mean, he had no answers for him. The rush was effective. Myles Garrett was getting to him. I mean, the Browns defense looked dominant in this game, and the Steelers just could not get anything going. So eventually, they end the half at 35-10. 35-10. The Browns are up 35-10, 25-point lead at half. Now, as we all expected, going into the second half, I assumed the Steelers would score points. They could not be this terrible for the entire game. The Browns would have to withstand a couple of big drives from the Steelers that would get the Steelers into good position. What I didn't expect was how quickly the Steelers would score. The Steelers end up going with 13 unanswered points in the third quarter, and they were able to do it with just so much speed. Deep passes, Juju Smith-Schuster, deep passes, Deontay Johnson. I mean, they were just having a field day in that second half. So they get close in this game to make it at least get 13 points on that. I think it was 35-23 at one point. But Cleveland answers as a beautiful drive with an amazing dump-off pass to Nick Chubb where he breaks free through the defenders. No one can stop him and scores a touchdown to make it 42-23. And at that point, it's done. It's done. I mean, you felt that the Steelers had some momentum. They had gotten close. But once that final touchdown to get them over 40 points was scored by the Cleveland Browns, you knew that it was at the end of the game. There was no chance the Steelers could get back after that. And, I mean, they played it. They earned it. I think Cleveland would get another 2 field goals to make it a 16-point lead at one point. And with an interception on Ben Roethlisberger again to make it 4 interceptions on the day, they would be able to seal that game off 48-37. Cleveland winning over the Steelers. Some incredible numbers to look at here. Baker Mayfield, 21 of 34, incredibly accurate. 263 yards, 3 touchdowns. Landry would get 92 yards and a touchdown. The combo of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Nick Chubb would get 76 yards and 18 carries. I would say the main guy getting the ball in that game. But then Kareem Hunt with another 8 carries on top, 48 yards and 2 touchdowns. So while obviously Nick Chubb with a catch for the touchdown, the running catch, but then his rushing, getting, just being the consistent yardage, Kareem Hunt was a red zone threat and was able to get the job done. That two-headed beast at running back is incredible for Cleveland Browns, and I think that could get them to go far in this one. On the other side of the ball, Ben Roethlisberger. Again, this stat's going to blow your mind, but Ben Roethlisberger went 47 for 68 attempts in this game. 501 yards. 501 yards. He still lost. 4 touchdowns, and here's the kicker, 4 interceptions. It doesn't matter how many yards you throw. If you throw 4 interceptions, you're going to lose that game. Too many short field opportunities for the Cleveland Browns was the issue, and they just could not get it done after that. It was disappointing to say the least if you're a Steelers fan. I don't know how you watch that and not cringe. You finally lose to someone that Ben Roethlisberger has only lost to Cleveland Browns twice in his career, and he gave up a big one in the playoffs. His wide receivers were huge beneficiaries of this. Juju Smith-Schuster going 13 receptions, 157 yards, and 1 touchdown. And Deontay Johnson on the other side of the field with 11 receptions and 117 yards. That tandem was brutal against this Browns defense. But again, when you're down 35-10 at half, it is a huge uphill battle, and it is really tough to get in that because you got to make sure the Browns don't score again. And as we mentioned, they're able to get touchdowns, able to get field goals, continue to just push that field goal post back, make it harder for the Steelers to get in this one, and an excellent job. Again, let's remind everyone, the Cleveland Browns did not have their head coach on the field making any play call. He was out because of COVID reasons. They had their special teams coach promoted to head coach for this one, acting head coach, and they played beautifully. The Browns clearly rallied around the issue of having no head coach. They decided they needed this one, and they played phenomenally. And it was impressive all around. Absolutely amazing game. And the Steelers have a lot to think about this offseason. That's for damn sure. But as we look ahead to next week, Cleveland Browns now are going to have to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. That is a tall order when you have a quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger, who's late in his career making mistakes. You now have to face Patrick Mahomes, who is not going to make the same mistakes and is going to have big plays. How will the Cleveland Browns defense fare against a Chiefs high-powered offense? That'll be interesting to see. And will the Browns continue to be able to score consistently throughout that game? And will they be able to put their offense in the position to score easily? So we will see how that unfolds. That'll be a tough one. I clearly will be leaning towards the Chiefs. I think they will be winning that one, but at least the Browns have a chance. On the other side of the ball, you will have the Ravens take on the Bills. I think the Bills have enough offensive power to beat the Ravens, and I think their defense will give the Ravens fits. Again, though, if Lamar Jackson's able to control the game and play well and effectively with his legs and play with that mature level that we saw on Sunday, I don't see why we can't see them beat the Bills, but I would pick the Bills over them. So I have the Chiefs and Bills making it onto the AFC Championship game. We'll see if anyone has an upset over that. On the other side, in the NFC Conference, obviously Tampa Bay will be taking on the New Orleans Saints, divisional rivals in a big divisional playoff weekend. I think the Buccaneers have that one. Drew Brees does not look that impressive. He did not make me think yesterday that he is the answer for this New Orleans Saints team. If their defense plays well and maybe Kamara comes alive, they have a shot. But I think Drew Brees is going to have a tough one against the Buccaneers front. And we'll see. I think Tom Brady's scoring a lot. I think he's playing well, connecting well with his wide receivers. There's no reason I don't think that he could win this one easily. So we'll have Buccaneers versus Saints with the Bucs moving forward, in my opinion. Then obviously the Green Bay Packers will be taking on... obviously, Packers going up against the Rams. And the Packers will destroy the Rams. There's no shot. I know the Rams have one of the most prolific defenses in this league, but there's no shot that they're able to beat the Packers. There's too strong an offense with Aaron Rodgers. He will find a way around them and score effectively, and the Rams are not going to be able to put enough points up to keep up with the Packers. So I have the Packers winning that one. We should see in the NFC Championship game between the Packers and the Buccaneers, Aaron Rodgers versus Tom Brady, exactly what you want. It's what we wanted all season. I'm excited for that one. It'll be a great matchup between two iconic quarterbacks. So another great weekend of football coming up next weekend. Let's see how it all unfolds. Those are my predictions for ChadBurn Show. We did okay from our predictions this week. We got most of Saturday. Obviously did predict the Bills would win. I said maybe the Rams would get it, so I'll give myself a half point on that one. I definitely did not think the Seahawks were going to lose. I mean, I did say Rams, but I didn't think they'd lose that bad. I did pick the Bucs. I did pick the Titans losing, so obviously off on that one. The Ravens end up getting the big win there. I did obviously think the Bucs would beat the Washington football team. And I did have the Browns over the Steelers because I thought the Browns should beat the Steelers based on just their performance alone and how bad the Steelers have been towards the end of the game, and they were the fake undefeated team. So doing all right for the ChadBurn Show. Our prediction game is okay. So let's see if we go 4-0 next week as we head into the divisional round for the playoffs, and then obviously the following weekend, the championship conference games. Now, there is not much to report on this one. There's not much to really discuss statistically, just gut feeling here. But Chris Mortensen released, and there was an article, Chris Mortensen and Tim McManus, who is a longtime Eagles beat reporter and now works for the ESPN. But the reporting for Chris Mortensen that Doug Pederson's job is not safe. We had a lot of rumors and everything that Doug Pederson was definitely coming back next season. He had the press conference the day before his meeting with Jeff Lurie, which was a Tuesday after the Week 17 loss to the Washington football team. And apparently, just by that meeting alone, Doug Pederson lost his security on this job. Hey everyone, just want to give a quick update since we just discussed kind of Doug Pederson's position with the Eagles. Wanted to say, obviously, right after we had finished recording this, the news came through that Doug Pederson would be let go by the Philadelphia Eagles. Shocking, crazy news. Just wanted to kind of edit that note as we were discussing it in there. We kind of probably predicted he would go and kind of wanted to go. But I wanted to let everyone know that we are aware of the news and definitely incredible to hear. Now let's see if Howie Roseman goes next. Whatever happened in that meeting, whatever Doug Pederson said, Jeff Lurie was not impressed. Jeffrey Lurie does not think he has a handle on this. Jeffrey Lurie is concerned with not just the Wentz issue and not just the losses, about the overall identity for this offensive team. Doug Pederson clearly does not have a grasp on it, was not able to easily explain it to Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the team. And if you cannot get across the message of how your identity for this team, your offensive identity to your boss, the owner, I mean, I don't see how else you convince anyone else. I don't see how you convince the fans. I don't see how you convince players coming in. I don't see how you convince coaches that you would hire to fill the offensive coordinator position. I mean, God, we have rumors that Press Taylor could be the offensive coordinator. And he's done nothing on this team to really, in my opinion, warrant this. So I'm not surprised his job's in danger. I'm actually happy to hear that his job is a little bit of jeopardy because that means that Jeffrey Lurie is taking into consideration the performance of this team and the performance of this coach. He has had a terrible last 3 seasons. He has had a terrible, run this year. And while he did win the Super Bowl in his second season, and there's only a small list of coaches who have done that in their second year with the team, taking them to the Super Bowl and winning, I mean, that can't be everything we take into consideration. We can't always say, well, he's a Super Bowl winning coach, that's it. We have to look at everything. We have to look at the 3 seasons since the Super Bowl. They have continued to drop, and we continue to see poor performances. Yes, we made the playoffs twice after Super Bowl. One, we got lucky winning a game. The other one, we didn't stand a chance because Carson Wentz got injured. I mean, there's just been – this team has been looking like it's steadily declining. And the only teams we seem to be able to beat consistently are NFC East teams. And that wasn't even something we were able to do this year. So I am glad to hear that Jeffrey Lurie is going to be looking at the big picture, looking at Doug Pederson in all of his works and understanding, is this the coach of the future? Because, like we said, they are in a tough position where they may have to keep Carson Wentz because of the contract. If they're not able to unload him to another team, we are stuck with his contract, and we need to make the decision of, do we try and move forward and improve him? Bring in someone that can coach him up, can get him back to the 2017 level. And if you've come to that decision that you may be stuck with Carson Wentz, then there's no reason you want to stick with Doug Pederson. Because Doug Pederson has shown that he cannot work with Carson Wentz, and in fact has ruined Carson Wentz's career. From Carson Wentz working with Doug Pederson, we have seen his productivity, his ability, everything just slip. And that's not fair. And I think Carson Wentz is looking somewhere else. We've heard him say that his relationship with Doug Pederson is fractured. Doug Pederson seems to think that it's okay. So there's no real understanding there in the locker room. Has Doug Pederson lost the locker room after that weird decision to play Nate Sudfeld, went down 3 in the fourth quarter against the Washington football team? I mean, he just seems to make decisions that have no really rhyme or reason, no real strategy, no real game plan behind it, and he makes it just on a whim, and that can't be the way we move forward as a football team. This organization will have no chance of success in the coming years if we have a coach like that. Again, Doug Pederson seems to play by the seat of his pants and doesn't really make any, adjustments early on in the game or have any strategy to make the teams ready. We've seen that one of the big problems with Philadelphia football teams going into games is they're not ready to start the game. Whatever they're coached up, the scheming, the strategy, the preparation, it's not there. So I am glad Jeffrey Lurie is looking at the whole body of work when it comes to Doug Pederson, not just the fact that he won a Super Bowl, and assessing him on that. Now, I still think there's a high percentage Doug Pederson is back. I think Jeffrey Lurie gives him one more season, but has a really short leash on him. But if the fact that we're hearing rumors right now that Jeffrey Lurie is considering moving on from Doug Pederson, that means he just completely bombed that exit interview. Completely bombed it. And it's even more telling that he has an exit interview with Carson Wentz. So while he says he thinks he can repair the relationship with Wentz, he's not done anything to our eyes to improve that. He hasn't reached out. He hasn't communicated. He hasn't done any of that. And I think Jeffrey Lurie is taking stock of all that. I think he's seeing about how Doug Pederson is handling this team. A big thing he always said was emotional intelligence. He wanted his coach to be able to connect with the players. And if Doug Pederson is losing that locker room, Jeffrey Lurie will move on quickly. He understands the importance of having a locker room cohesiveness, ability to, have each other's back and understand the next move of each person. And if Doug Pederson is going to hurt that and be detrimental to the locker room, I think Lurie moves forward. I will say, though, if you fire Doug Pederson, you have to fire Howie Roseman. There is no way you can fire Doug Pederson without putting blame on Howie Roseman. This season was not just Doug Pederson's fault. This was clearly a complete organizational front office mess. Howie Roseman has put this team in a hole by continuously giving contracts to aging players that have not been able to play an entire season for years. The Deshaun Jackson contract, the Alshon Jeffrey contract, Jason Peters, not getting younger at the line with consistent good players, terrible drafting at the wide receiver position, defense is not being filled with young talent, continually giving contracts to older players there as well. His inability to find young, new talent and be able to cut ties because he has a sentimental issue or value placed on a player. I mean, that's been the downfall of the front office. They have not made any steps to make this a team that could have continued success year after year after year. They saw the roster they had in 2017 and they said, that's all we need is that roster. But as any good team will tell you and show you, if you watch the New England Patriots, every year after they win the Super Bowl, they get rid of key players that help them win the Super Bowl because they know that they need to get younger and better every single year. And that's what championship teams do. And Howie Roseman has not given the talent for this team to be successful to Doug Pederson. So while Doug Pederson has done a hell of a job coaching like shit, Howie Roseman is the one who gave him the ammo, gave him the roster to work with. And it was a terrible roster to work with. The decisions to, extend the contract, pay Carson Wentz what they did, and then draft a quarterback is the dumbest thing we've ever seen in the NFL. And his comments on Quarterback Factory, he had to run those back because it was so dumb and stupid after the season. He had to apologize and make amends for that. So if you're Jeffrey Lurie, I don't think there's any way you can fire Doug Pederson and not fire Howie Roseman. You will completely lose face if that's the case. There's just no shot. There's no shot you can put all the blame on Doug Pederson here. It has been shared blame. I think you could fire Howie Roseman and not fire Doug Pederson. I think that's possible. You say maybe the roster wasn't good enough for the ability to execute the play calling that Doug Pederson likes to call. You can maybe say that. But there's no way you fire just Doug. So if Doug is in the hot seat, I think that puts Howie in the hot seat, and we'll see how that all unfolds. I still don't. I think Doug Pederson will be back. I really do. It's a shame, but he'll be back. But at least we know that he is not just going to be able to skate by on his laurels and will actually have to perform each year and be able to answer easy questions to the owner about offensive identity. You're supposed to be an offensive specialist, Doug. Prove it to the world. You think you can right this ship? Prove it. Because right now, if I were Jeffrey Lurie, I'd get rid of everyone. So I guess we should all be lucky I'm not the one running the team, because I would have taken a bulldozer to it right now, put a couple sticks of dynamite, blew that shit up, and restarted. So we'll see. There will be more reports, more meetings to come with for Doug Pederson. I think he's meeting Jeffrey Lurie tomorrow. So we will hear how that unfolds. I mean, maybe next week we'll be discussing looking for new coaches for the Philadelphia Eagles. I have no idea, but I mean, maybe that's the case. And we'll have some more interesting topics to cover before we get into basketball. It's crazy, folks. I mean, the Eagles are a fascinating saga that will continue on for a long time. And with that, folks, I think we're going to wrap it up there. It's been a fun episode. Obviously, great covering the NFL playoffs. It's been amazing to kind of discuss all that. Great weekend of football. Excited for the next weekend. We will have, obviously, coverage of all those games, the winners, discuss how our predictions unfolded, and then see where we stand for the different conference championship games in the NFC and the AFC, and then who we predict will make it to the Super Bowl. We'll also discuss further about the Doug Pederson, whether or not he's fired, whether or not Jeffrey Lurie has decided to move on, or whether he's given any kind of demands to the organization to do to get better, anything he expects to see during the offseason. We'll cover all of that and more. Again, the Sixers have been playing good basketball. They lost the last two. They've been close games with some key players missing. So we'll start discussing more as the Sixers play on. We see them play more competitive teams, how they actually look. They've been very dominant early on, but we'll see how that unfolds with, obviously, the head coach and Doc Rivers. But I think we'll have a lot to talk about, a lot of great stuff to cover next week on the show as well. But until then, thank you so much for joining in and listening into the show. I hope everyone stays safe and healthy. Until next time, have a good evening and good night. Thank you for listening to the ChadBurn Show. Remember to check out all new episodes every Monday at 7 p.m. on Google Podcasts, Apple iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and all major platforms where you listen to your podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with me and want to send in your questions or requests for topics to discuss in the show, you can email chadburn.show@gmail.com. All episodes have video recorded, which is then posted to our YouTube channel, The ChadBurn Show. Be sure to subscribe to us where you get your podcast or on our YouTube channel to stay up to date with all our new content. You can also follow the show on Instagram at ChadBurn Show and on Facebook, The ChadBurn Show, to see clips from previously recorded episodes and information on all upcoming shows.